Hey everyone, welcome to Cuberviews episode 50. Woo, episode 50. This is your host, Ian Braverman. I hope you're having a great day. Today I'm joined by Kerby. How's it going?
It was great. Thanks for having me, Ian. And congrats on your 50th episode.
Thank you. It feels like I just started. It's crazy that 50 main episodes plus the bonus episodes. Like, oh my gosh, it's been, this has been going on for a long time. It's crazy. Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. We've met at multiple events like CubeCon, Capital Cube Championship. Yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I've been playing since back in middle school. I actually had some friends hand me a red-green beast deck from Onslaught Block and got me addicted then. Played for a couple years till Muradin Block, pretty much when like everybody else kind of dropped out because of Affinity. And then I jumped back in a little bit during college, but I've been playing consistently since original Zendikar. So just been hooked on the game since. Funny thing with Cube, though, I actually had a terrible first Cube experience.
Oh, really?
Yes. I had a friend that introduced me to Cube, but their Cube had no English cards in it.
What?
So anything I was unfamiliar with, we were just pulling out our phones, trying to figure out what it was while we were playing. So there's definitely a timeline when I did not stick around to Cube after all this, but I thankfully gave it another try like years later. Played a little bit of competitive Magic and then took a break and just kind of jumped on the Cube bandwagon.
That's crazy. Why would you build a cube with only non-English cards? Like, what is the point of that?
I know back then, non-English cards were very popular alongside foils. That was kind of the premier card, because nowadays we have all the different variants, the full arts, the showcase cards. So that was the popular thing for high-end cards back in the day.
Oh, wow. That's
still
interesting.
A pretty miserable experience.
What was your favorite card in that deck? Do you remember?
Oh, the Beast deck. It might have been Avarax. So it's a 5-mana red 3/3 that when it comes in, you can search your library, I think, for up to 3 Avaraxes.
Oh, I think I had that in Eternal Masters draft, actually.
Yeah, which seems tangentially related to the cube we're going to be discussing today.
True. It all goes back to somewhere. Yeah, I just wanted to say, everyone, thank you so much for listening. Like I said before, this is episode 50. I usually mention at the end, but if you haven't done it before, I would highly appreciate if you like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. I appreciate everyone's support and following throughout the show. So thank you all. And ConnectiCube is going to be happening Saturday, February 28th and Sunday, March 1st. Going to be a lot of great cubes there from Connecticut and beyond. It's going to be Saturday and Sunday, 12 to 5, and then top 8, 5 p.m. Sunday. 64-person event. So definitely get your tickets while they last. Yeah. So what are some of your hobbies outside of Magic and Cube?
So outside of Magic, huge board game fan. So I meet almost once a week with a group of friends. We play some heavy 3-5 hour board games, usually worker placements, engine builders, occasional deck builder here and there. We've also been working on a Frosthaven campaign for like a couple years now and meeting for that. I'm not huge into D&D, but with the more combat focused of the Gloomhaven, Frosthaven series, that's been a ton of fun. I'm also really big into music and rhythm games. I actually played Dance Dance Revolution competitively.
What? I love Dance Dance Revolution. I have a Dance Dance Revolution mat on the wall over there.
Yeah, I have a really nice metal one for at home now.
What?
So
oh my gosh.
From time to time.
What's your favorite song in Dance Dance Revolution?
I'd have to look it up.
Or what's your favorite game, let's say?
So I really got into Sound Voltex for a little while. So that's more of a, like, not a keyboard and record scratcher necessarily. It more has knobs. But there's like a different rhythm game for every different instrument you can think of. So that's one that if I end up at an arcade, like a round one, Dave & Buster's, whatnot, I'll usually go looking for one of those machines.
My favorite Dance Dance Revolution games were Supernova 2 and Extreme. Those are the best Dance Dance Revolution games.
Extreme was great. We had an Extreme machine at Virginia Tech when I was going there for college. So that was our game of choice.
That's sick. At the next CubeCon or sometime I see you next, we're going to have to go to an arcade bar and play some Dance Dance Revolution.
Sounds amazing. I'll probably be at one again at PAX Unplugged. There's a round one within walking distance that has a ton of those.
Oh, that's sick. Wow. And we were talking a little bit before we started recording that you have a pretty cool job. Tell me about what you do for work.
Yeah, I've been in the TCG retail industry for almost 14 years now. I was mostly handling inventory operations for about 12 years. I left that to do project management and also just took a little break, went back to school for finance before coming back to my previous job when there was a management shift. So since then, I've been managing our IT department, website, product catalog, and such. It's been really great this year. I've been enjoying it.
That's awesome. Very cool. And today we're talking about a cube that when I saw it at Capital Cube Championship, I just had to play it. I was like, man, this cube sounds crazy. We're talking about the Omnipresent Imposters. If people listen to my Capital Cube Championship bonus episode, for some reason, I just cannot keep the name of this card in my head. I just forgot the name of the card like 50 times. And this is a cube where each player starts the draft with two copies of the card Omnipresent Imposter. Want to let us know what this card does?
Yeah, so Omnipresent Imposter is a test card from Mystery Booster 2. It's 2 generic mana for a 2/1. It has Changeling, so that means it has every creature type in all zones. It has every card name, not just creature name. And if you would search your library for anything, you can search for it instead.
That's such an insanity card. I mean, what was the inspiration behind building a cube like this? Like, so I've played so many awesome cubes that are like rule changing cubes. Like, for example, the Cascade Cube by Zach Barish, or the Bolt Cube that I have, or Changeling Cube. And those cubes are a rules change cube. They involve like an emblem that everyone has, or a rules change, compared to this cube that I feel is so elegant because so much of the gameplay is different that we're going to talk about, but there's no rules change. You just start with two of this omnipresent imposter.
Yeah, so to answer your first question, how I came upon like building this cube, as many cube curators do, try to build like a horror cube or whatnot. So I had that in my back pocket and I was working on it. And when I had discovered this card and thought it was really neat while drafting it, I decided to include it in the cube. And then iterating from there, I'm like, well, why not have everybody get a copy of it? Because that works really well with the horror typals of vampires, zombies, spirits for overlapping. Did a little testing with my friend Shoop with this idea, and it wasn't quite doing what I was looking for with filling that slot. A 2-mana 2/1 that doesn't really do anything else on the surface is a little tough to just put into an environment and have people be super excited about it. So I took a step back. I'm like, I'm curious what an environment with this card would look like. So first I put in a second copy because it feels really bad to draw that or have it in your opening hand and not be able to search for another one. And I just started looking at like interesting interactions. So big thing obviously is typal. With having Changeling, it fits really well for that glue between different creature types. There's a number of names matter cards that came out in Magic that might scale due to the name, or something like partner with, where you could go search it up. And then just looking for effects where you have this new modal option of, instead of something just searching for a land, you could search for a land or the 2/1. But to get back to what you were saying with the different rules or emblems and stuff that other cubes have, I actually got a really interesting comment from somebody when they were drafting at CubeCon. They were like, this feels like a cube that has like a special rule with it, but you're just playing normal Magic and you're just following the rule on the card. There's no outside rule, additional rule, emblem, etc. And it just offers these different plays that you normally wouldn't have with a regular game of Magic or traditional cards.
Yeah, it's so interesting because, especially, we'll go one by one, but especially the piece that you can search for it when you're searching your deck. Because, like you're saying, there's no rules change, but because there are so many cards in this cube that allow you to tutor, you can get it so consistently. You can tutor for it in so many ways. I mean, like literally lands. For example, a card like Ash Barrens, you can discard it and search your deck for a basic land, reveal and put it in your hand. Because Omnipresent Imposter says that when you're searching your deck, you can search your deck for it instead. Any card that says search your deck, you can find the Omnipresent Imposter. So while this cube doesn't have a rules change, it really does feel like, because even starting turn one, you can get an Omnipresent Imposter right into play. Does that, do you think, make it feel like there's a rules change because it's just so consistent and it shows up so often in the gameplay?
The ability to just tutor it consistently allows you to build more around that card, and it gives you that consistent glue for the creature types. So if your deck is needing a quick access to an elf to trigger an ability or a dragon to behold, you're able to just cycle your Ash Baron to guarantee one to the hand to be able to utilize those abilities. Sometimes you'll even want to have 18 lands instead of 17, because sometimes those lands you're consistently just searching up your imposter, or in the late game, if you don't need any more lands, you can just go ahead and fetch and put a 2/1 into play. So I think that consistency definitely adds to the texture of the games.
Absolutely. And because Omnipresent Imposter has these three big effects, the changeling effect, the all card name, and when you're searching your deck, you can search for it instead. It really feels like this cube is playing on so many different axes. Like, for example, I love changeling cubes. When I had Tim on the show, I was inspired to build my own changeling cube. And when I played this cube at Capital Cube Championship, I went an Esper party deck. And because I was so consistently able to tutor for the Omnipresent Imposter, it really allowed me to have a full party a lot of the time. And a lot of the party cards are not that good when you don't have a full party. But when you have a full party, these cards become insane. Like Squad Commander, 3 and a white, 3/3. You get a 1/1 when it enters for each creature in your party. But if you have a full party, all your creatures at the beginning of combat in your turn get +1/+1 indestructible. And like, there was a few cards like that with the party mechanic that are like, wow, these cards are strong. So that was a really fun deck.
I feel like the party mechanics were intentionally kind of like kept in check when they came out in Zendikar Rising. But having the ability to just have these changelings on the board, especially ones that you can tutor at will, allows these effects to scale much faster than they would for a normal game. I remember hearing May talk about her Fey Cube and how powerful changelings are in that environment. I believe she also has Party in that cube. I have unfortunately not had the chance to play that. I have never been able to make the list at the events where it's being held. But I imagine that those changelings really help with a lot of those typal synergies and quickly building up Party to make those effects much better.
Yeah, like for example, there are some other great cards I had. Like I was really in love with Acquisitions Expert, which is 1 and a black for a 1/2. When it enters, your opponent reveals number of cards in their hand equal number of creatures in your party, and then they discard a card. Like, I mean, this card's great. I mean, if you have a full party, they're basically often revealing their full hand, and you can just discard anything, including lands. So that card was great. So I had a ton of fun with that. And there are so many creature types and just creatures in Magic that I think are so unique and interesting, but can only be unlocked when you have enough of a density of a creature type. Like, for example, one card is Spell Stutter Sprite. I love that card. When it enters, you counter a spell with mana value X or less, or X number of fairies you control. But it's hard to have a cube that has enough fairies unless you're literally a changeling cube. But because you have these omnipresent imposters, I feel like cards like this can be unlocked, and it really allows for a lot of really interesting cards you can add to the cube.
For Spellstutter Sprite specifically, those are also situations where you can go ahead and like fetch in Imposter the turn before and then keep that up. With it having flash, you can just kind of manage your mana well. And with the MH3 fetches, like they tap for mana or can go search. So tempo decks that utilize Spell Stutter and like have a lot of flexibility there to kind of play that tempo plan.
Yeah, and another thing with the creature types mattering that I thought was really clever with this cube is there are also cards that actually make the imposters worse or get better because your opponent has an imposter. Like, for example, looking at the list, the card Dragon Hunter, which is a white for a 2/1, and it has protection from dragons, and it can block dragons that they reach. So this means that the imposters can't actually block them. And because you play this on one and your opponents may often turn two have an imposter. I mean, this card becomes better because they have an imposter in play. I think that's really unique about this cube design that I really like, that there are actually downsides to the imposter part.
With Changeling being so powerful, there needs to be a little bit of a trade-off since it can just overlap well with all the different creature type matters cards. Having some of these cards that are anti-changeling, so you mentioned Dragon Hunter, that's a great one that there's dragons in the cube outside of changelings. It blocks pretty well. It helps you get damage in. There's also Kargan Intimidator, one of my favorites in there, that has the line, cowards can't block warriors.
Yeah.
Since all changelings are cowards, it's a great way for either the warrior deck or the party deck, or just incidentally have warriors style deck to be able to get through that extra damage. Something I did want to quickly mention on the includes of the different creature types in here. Something I was trying to be very careful of is making it a little too hard to track what creature types to follow. For anybody that's played Morningtide way back, where you drafted around both the race and the class, it became very difficult to draft in that format and keep track of what you wanted to focus on between the two. They were trying to not make it on rails with just the different races from Lorwyn, but it also added a ton of complexity with you juggling the different creature types. So what I tried to do here was, we'll call them, I had focal types and splash types. Focal types are the ones that you're going to build a large portion of your deck around. So this is elves, goblins, dragons, and those 4 party types: warriors, rogues, clerics, wizards. Whereas I have splash types, one of which you mentioned, fairies. There's just a few fairy stuff sprinkled in, like Spellstutter Sprite, and you have like Fairy Miscreant, which we'll get to the names matter stuff, but is also just a nice 1-drop rogue to have around. There's also like a couple cards that care about giants, a couple cards that care about elementals, and those are ones that benefit you from just having your imposter or changeling without you having to build your deck around them.
Yeah, I think that's a really smart way to do it. I've seen many cubes and played different cubes that have heavy creature type matters. And sometimes they can feel like they're definitely on rails. Like, for example, if you just have a bunch of cards that care about elves and, oh, it just becomes take all the best elves. But I feel like the Omnipresent Imposters, 1, and the party mechanic, 2, gives the players an incentive to mix them. Because if you have a couple cards that care about elves or a couple cards that care about dragons, you can always get the imposter. So at least those cards will be turned on. It kind of gives you incentive to play these creature type matter cards and not just like go all in on one every time. I think that's really cool.
That's been one of the big learning experiences with this cube, where you don't want somebody to be on rails and just drafting a specific creature type. When we drafted it when you all drafted it at Capital Cube, I still haven't gotten to do a 8-player draft with it myself. There was a vampires deck that showed up during both of the drafts, and that was an example of just an on rails, I'm going to draft all the vampire stuff, and not really what I was going for. So that was something I needed to pull back on, look into other creature types that didn't feel as parasitic and branched out along the other focal creature types. So, for example, goblins was something that I decided to put more in. So goblin warriors are great. Goblin rogues are great. And just different overlaps that can fit in multiple of those creature type archetypes. But while constructing decks, I also want players to have to pull in from another creature type or set of creature types and not be able to just have one. And Omnipresent is able to help glue those two together, but also just creates a better experience when you have to kind of juggle between the two. It's like, okay, what am I doing here? How much focus do I want to put into this one? How can it overlap with this other one besides just having these changelings to also offer those creature types?
Yeah. And the third thing about the card, which we mentioned briefly, was that Omnipresent Imposter also has all card names, which unlocks some really unique interactions in this cube that really I haven't seen in other cubes, which I think is really cool. Like, for example, I love conspiracies in general. I think that I'm a bigger fan of conspiracies than most people, but this cube has a couple conspiracies that I feel like don't get to see much play because when you play them, you have to name a creature. And in a singleton format, you can only have one of a creature compared to when you're playing conspiracy draft. You get draft five of something and then all five of them. Like, for example, assemble the rank and file. You start the game with the conspiracy face down, and then you secretly name a card. And then at any time, you can reveal the chosen card. And then the creature with the chosen name, when it dies, you can pay a black and get a 2/2 tap zombie. Normally in Cube, it's usually singleton. That wouldn't really work. But when you have two omnipresent imposters, it becomes really doable. I think that's really cool.
The conspiracies are definitely a great include here for the names matter stuff. Conspiracies are also known to be kind of busted, so I treaded very carefully in choosing these. So I started with the 5 conspiracy take the crown monocolor common ones. So for each of them, I believe you have to pay the respective mana cost when it would trigger. So the green one, beginning of combat, you can pay a green to put a +1/+1 counter on the named card. As you mentioned, rank and file, you pay a black when it dies to be able to get a 2/2. So they feel a little bit more balanced than the other ones. They can still kind of snowball for a while, especially since on average you have 3 creatures in your deck that are able to trigger off of it. They can get even crazier when you have like a bunch of fairy miscreants and the blue, when you deal combat damage with that creature, pay blue to draw a card.
Oh, wow.
So they were a very fun, unique include that, as you mentioned, a lot of environments can't really use to full effectiveness because you typically only have one card with that name. There are a few other interesting includes in the cube that care about names. One example is partner with that cares about a name, but that also overlaps with the searching replacement effect. So if you were to go search for Regna the Redeemer off of your Krav the Unredeemed, you can always just replace that with the search ability. But you have cards like Fairy Miscreant that when it comes in, if you have another Fairy Miscreant, you get to draw a card. So you could always play out your Omnipresent Imposter and then play a Fairy Miscreant the next turn. A big one that ended up being much more powerful than I thought and is only included in the Kaldheim theme decks, I believe, is a card called Gladewalker Ritualist. It is 2 and a green for a 3/3 changeling and says, whenever another creature named Gladewalker Ritualist enters under your control, you draw a card.
Ooh.
So you can just play this out. A 3/3 body for 3 is pretty decent in this format. And then just fetch out an Omnipresent, draw a card, or tutor it with something else, play it, draw a card.
This card feels like it was like designed for this cube. It has changeling, and then that's perfect for this cube.
Then we start to get to some of the more absurd interactions. These are nice splashy effects that are very powerful. You do need to like take a turn off or ramp towards it or work towards it, and can feel a lot more powerful than what other people are doing, but it feels like a feature of the cube. It feels like the cool thing that people want to do. So one example of that is Thrumming Stone.
Yes.
And you got to see Greg go off with this at Capital Cube, I believe.
Yeah, Greg was going nuts with this card.
So Thrumming Stone is a 5-mana artifact, and it says spells you control have Ripple 4. What Ripple is when you cast that spell, you look at X cards from the top of your deck, so in this case 4. Any that share a name with the spell you cast, you can then cast for free. And then you can repeat that ripple chain off of it. So if I go ahead and just cast a Chart a Course, and there's an Omnipresent Imposter in the top 4 cards, since it has all card names, I then get to cast that for free. And then Omnipresent Imposter ripples, I look at the top 4 cards, and any non-lands from that, I get to cast for free, since Omnipresent Imposter shares those names. If you hit another imposter off of it, you get to ripple once again. So it's pretty crazy, but it's just like something super cool that you can't really do anywhere else. One other call out is Secret Salvage. So this is a card from either Revolt.
This is the
but
card that you were
nobody
like,
knows.
please don't open this card in a pack. Oh my gosh. I
It's
remember
a
this card.
it's a 5 mana sorcery in black, and it reads exile target non-land card from your graveyard. Search your library for any number of cards with the same name as it. Reveal them, put it into your hand. Since Omnipresent Imposter has all card names, if you exile one from your graveyard, you get to demonic tutor for any number of cards from your deck. Where else are you going to do that? Where else are you going to be able to just search your deck for any number of cards and take them to your hand?
I think you found the one use for this card ever. Another one that I think is really awesome is Infernal Tutor, which you can reveal a card from your hand and search your deck for a card with the same name. So if you have an imposter, then you can just search for any cards, Demonic Tutor. There's just the list goes on. There's so many just sick cards. I can see you really put in a lot of time into carrying this list and really found some cool stuff. And one thing that I wanted to ask you about is when I've tried to build cubes that are highly recontextualized, like my Bolt cube that each player starts at 3 life, or my Changeling cube that I'm trying to be lower powered, is it can be really hard to balance. And especially when you haven't played the cube before and you're trying out some rules change that maybe nobody else has tried before, and you're really going into a new space and like you're a pioneer into maybe something that nobody's really tried, that it can be hard to balance it. How did you go around balancing this cube for the first time? Like, did you have a benchmark for what would be the kind of base power level of the cube, or was it kind of just like a we'll see how it goes?
So I will say this is easily the most ambitious cube that I've ever put together. So there was a lot of trial and error trying to figure out, okay, what are all the interactions with this card? Because first you just need to kind of explore whatever that rule or emblem or special thing about this cube is. Because sometimes you'll find interactions that you didn't even know about. Tons of Scryfall searching. we start there. And if you haven't used the tagger in Scryfall, it is such an amazing tool. If you go to a card detail page and you scroll down, there's a link for Scryfall tagger, and it'll show you all the different tags that the Scryfall community has attached to it. The top section is anything related to its art, and then the bottom section is anything related to its mechanics. So I have been using OTag typle dash whatever creature type to try and find all these different cards that care about different creature typals so I can include them. Because I can't just go, hey, I want to look at all the elves. Hey, I want to look at all the goblins. I want to know about all of them, all the different cards that interact with it. If you haven't used Scryfall Tagger, absolutely recommend it. It is such an amazing tool. So from there, it's figuring out kind of the direction. Like you might start with some archetypes. It's like, oh, hey, here's a bunch of cool cards that I want to include in this cube that builds this archetype well, and you start to branch out. For anybody that's listened to Lucky Paper Radio, they've done a number of episodes on, hey, we're going to start with a card, and then we're going to start to build the cube off of that card based on its different effects. So finding a nice direction there, figuring out if there's any pet cards, any cards that you think would be fun in that environment to include. I think after you have a good portion of those cards kind of put together, from there you're figuring out, okay, how am I going to mold this? What is the like power level? What are the style of plays that I can expect from this environment? But honestly, it just comes down to you put those cards together, you shuffle them up, you find some people to play with it, and you see how it goes. Ian, I told you about this at ConnectiCube, but that was the first time that this cube has actually gotten an 8-player draft. I have not been able to do an 8-player draft with this cube, and it's gotten now 2 drafts at ConnectiCube and 5 drafts at CubeCon. I am very jealous. We unfortunately had waning interest of cube for my local group over the summer. So the months leading up to when we had to lock in the list for CubeCon, I wasn't able to get the testing in. And I'm so thankful that we had ConnectiCube before the CubeCon list got locked in, because as you saw, there were some power outliers. I hear VV is a pretty good card.
Arcane Savant that's a strong one. I love that card, but oh my gosh.
Yeah. Well, one of the players told me, it's like, hey, every time we have tried this in our cube projects, it always gets busted on something.
It went infinite with everything.
You're never going to get everything, and then you're going to limit your design based on trying to not break that card.
Yeah.
From there, it's just kind of like seeing how people enjoy it, see what's working, what's not working, what might be a little too good for the environment, or what is not nearly good enough for the environment. There were a handful of names matter cards that I ended up cutting. Arachnus Web and Arachnus Spider was an example. Really cool. You could tap your Arachnus Spider to go get an Omnipresent, to then tap your Omnipresent to get an Omnipresent, and then tap your Omnipresent to go get a Web. But it was way too slow, and nobody wanted to play the webs.
Arachnid Spider. That's like a 7-mana 5/7 or something. Wow. That card's funny.
15 All-Star?
Yeah.
Something like that.
That's sweet. I could definitely imagine that with something like the Omnipresent Imposter, just before you've even built a cube and even tested it for the first time, not even knowing what the impact of that card alone would be. Like, how often will players want to tutor for this? How strong will it actually be in play? Is that something that you also had to think about while designing the cube?
Yeah, I had a few inklings of, oh, hey, these are kind of plays that you can do, like being able to search for it right onto the battlefield and being able to cycle in Ash Barons to go get it, and a few of those different interactions. It's another thing to start playing with it, because when you're in a game of Magic and you are given that additional choice, that choice then branches into other choices, and you have this giant new decision tree. Like, hey, all my cards just had a single mode or two modes, and now it has this additional mode that I needed to keep in mind. And not just on your side, but also on your opponent's side. Hey, they can go ahead and fetch in an Omnipresent off of this, which triggers Elvish Warmaster to then put another 1/1 elf onto the board that they can then block with. So there's a lot more that you have to then keep in mind.
Yeah, definitely a lot of thinking with this cube. And another cube that this cube does is it also gives player a Cogwork Librarian at the start of the draft, which I've had a few cubes on in the show before, that players get a Cogwork Librarian at the beginning. And if people don't know what Cogwork Librarian is, it's a 4-mana 3/3 hill giant that lets you put Cogwork Librarian back in the pack during the draft to take 2 cards in the pack. Why did you give players this Cogwork Librarian in this cube? I feel like it makes a lot of sense to me, with it being so synergy driven. Also, just cubes like this, that it can be maybe a little overwhelming for players during the draft to just have that option of, oh, I feel like this card is really important for my deck. At least I can take 2 from this pack. Or if I'm confused on a pack, it's like, well, I can take a Cogwork.
I've gotten mixed responses about Cogwork. I have some players that absolutely love Cogwork Librarian, and the fact that everybody has one at the start and have those additional choices. And then you have somebody that goes ahead and like picks 5 of those in the first pack, so that they have a whole bunch of double picks in pack 2. Some people live for that. And it sets the tone for the cube that, like, hey, this isn't a super serious environment. Like, we're here to have a little bit of fun. It's going to be a little wacky. It's still going to be, I want to say, for anybody that played Unstable, that was a fun environment that's still kind of stuck by the Magic rules. And even though this isn't quite as silly as an Unset, it's one of those, we have guards of where this cube lives, but we're still going to have some fun with it. This isn't the cube you want to grind to go in like top 8 an event.
Unless you really know what you're doing.
Unless you really know what you're doing. So I have had other players that are kind of like, hey, I don't know that this is necessary or not. I've taken both opinions into consideration, and I'm still leaning towards the adding a little fun, adding a little spice to the environment. It also allows people to end up with an even 45 cards, like you would for a normal draft. And as we'll probably get into, players draft 3 packs of 14 with this cube. So 3 packs 14 plus 2 imposters plus Cogwork gives you your normal 45 cards.
Yeah, I think that makes it really clean. How does that affect gameplay? Do players even notice it? Like, I feel like this is an underexplored space in general. Like when I had Nick Z on a previous episode to talk about Mono Red Cube, we talked about how in that cube, it's played now with 3 packs of 12, because players just get so many playables when it's a Mono Red Cube. And in a cube like this, do players feel the effects of having three less cards, or because they can always play imposter, do they have more playables than they usually would?
I also imagine with the mono red cube, since you're not having to worry about fixing, that
Yeah,
also takes off a number of picks that you don't have to worry about because you're just putting basic mountains in.
compared
So
to this
that,
cube that you want to take a ton of lands, you can tutor for the
oh,
imposters.
yes. So part of the decision for the 3 packs of 14 was I needed to entice people to play the 2 imposters. As we mentioned earlier on, 2 mana, 2/1, not very exciting. So in addition to cards caring about having this changeling with all names that you can search up, I needed people to be encouraged to play this 2 mana, 2/1 in place of other options in the cube. A couple things that I did was one, I decided to reduce the number of 2-drop creatures in the cube across colors.
Mhm.
Since you're going to be ending up with 2 imposters, they should slot into that 2-drop slot for you. And that's also less picks that they have to like contemplate at the end of the draft if they want to include it or not. As the curator, I feel like I'm succeeding if players are playing both of them in their decks. The other thing that I need to make sure of is that there's not too much variety of creature types, as well as too much density of any one creature type. So we were talking about how I'm trying to make it so players don't just draft one creature type to make their deck. Like they should be encouraged to overlap with other creature types. So by restricting the card pool a little bit, I feel like it accomplishes those two goals pretty well. But also, as a curator, it forces me to make a very tight list. Since this is like with imposters, cogwork, a 360, which are my preferred cube size.
So another question that I had for you also is Omnipresent Imposter is a card from Mystery Booster 2. It's a card that probably most people have not seen. And with a whole cube built around basically a fake card, what has been the reaction by players to this cube? Are players like afraid to draft this cube? Do people express uncertainty and want to play it? Or I was really excited to try it.
I want to say people fall into one of two camps. Either they're really excited to try it out. They're like, huh, I've never experienced something like that. I'm really interested in like what type of interactions and whatnot I can pull off and what cards are included in this cube. And then you have the other camp that's like, that sounds like a lot of thinking that I'm not wanting to necessarily do. So sometimes it can end up being more intimidating than it actually is. I think the replacement search line is what typically makes people a little weary.
Yeah, that scared me a little bit.
Yeah. And I find that when somebody is drafting the cube for the first time, they're mostly focusing on the creature types and building around that as they would for like a Bloom Burrow, where they're just trying to make a nice cohesive deck with the different creature types. And this is a changeling that can help fill in that gap. While they're drafting, if they hit a card, they're like, I don't know how this interacts with this. They'll just skip it and somebody else will pick that up. And then when they're playing a match and they see their opponent like play one of those cards, then it clicks. It's like, oh, that's how it interacts. So I do feel like the cube comes off more intimidating than it actually is, just due to a little bit of that rules baggage. But it's really one of those, you jump into it and you start playing and drafting, you're able to make something that's already good and cohesive. And then you just kind of learn more as you go.
I totally felt that when I was playing it. It really felt like for the first couple picks, I was like, oh my God, I'm lost. What am I doing? And then I started to see some party cards and I was like, okay, I have a lane. Like you said, I feel like the part that's probably easiest to latch onto when you're first getting into this cube is the changeling part, because that's probably feels more familiar than crazy cards like Infernal Tutor for the first time. But I totally agree. But speaking of rules baggage, this cube, I've never seen anything like this before, which I think is really funny, is it has at the bottom a whole section for individual card rulings and then multiple card rulings. Does this cube have players confused by individual card interactions a lot? Like, did it get a lot of judge calls?
Funny enough, I don't think this cube ended up being one with like the most or weirdest judge calls during CubeCon. But During the process of building this, I also needed to look up the rules and just make sure that it worked properly within the rules of Magic. So, since I'm already taking the time to look up all these rulings and interactions, I felt it was best for me just to also put them out there for people that are kind of like, I'm not exactly sure how this works. And they can just pull up the primer real quick and be like, okay, that makes sense. Like a weird case when it comes to Frostpire Arcanist. This is a Kaldheim card nobody knows. It is 4 and a blue for a 2/5 giant wizard. Costs 1 less if you control a giant or a wizard. But more importantly, when this creature enters, search your library for an instant or sorcery card with the same name as a card in your graveyard, reveal it, put it in your hand, then shuffle. So this means if you have an Omnipresent Imposter in your graveyard, you can go search up an instant or sorcery card of any name. It also means, since you have the replacement for Omnipresent, you can have no cards in your graveyard and still do the replacement search of grabbing Omnipresent, which doesn't sound intuitive because normally you would not be able to legally grab anything from your deck if you don't have anything in your graveyard. But because of Omnipresent Imposter's replacement effect for searching, you still legally can do that. So it's just kind of those like weird cases that come up that when you write it down, like, okay, that makes sense. This is the reason why. But nobody wants to go dig in the comprehensive rules except for myself.
Wow, that's very interesting. Wow.
There are also 2 cards that have outdated Oracle text, and I haven't figured out the best way to convey this information to people yet. Pack Hunt, the old wording is search your library for up to 3 copies of target creature, which doesn't really make great sense. But the updated Oracle information is you search your library for 3 cards that share a name with target creature. So sometimes I'll put a little piece of paper in front of it. So while people are drafting, they know what the Oracle text is. I think at CubeCon, I put a little note on the box. I might have to like get somebody to alter it and write the Oracle text on it. Just something where I don't want people that know ahead of time what the card does to have a significant advantage drafting that versus somebody that if they were able to see the Oracle text could grok it and be able to play it.
Huh. That makes a lot of sense. Pack Hunt. Wow. I think I had this when I was a kid. I was like, what do you do with this card? This card is terrible.
No, it's a triple demonic tutor.
It's triple demonic tutor. You're right. Until they kill the thing that you're targeting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me about some of your favorite crazy plays you've seen in this cube or favorite cards. One card that I thought was insanely funny and like, oh my gosh, when I saw it was Sever the Bloodline. 3 and a black, exile target creature and all other creatures with the same name with flashback also for 5 black black. This card's brutal. I mean, it's just a board wipe that exiles everything, or you can hit one of their creatures and then also hit their imposters. There's a lot of weird stuff you can do with this card.
This was a very contentious card. So one of my goals while building this cube was to not discourage a player from playing Omnipresent Imposters. So I did not want them necessarily to be punished for searching it out or for playing it or even including it in their deck. So I kind of gated it based on mana cost. So for instance, Declaration Stone never saw the light of day in this cube because it essentially does the same thing for 2 mana. And that would just be way too brutal. Sever,
and it also only hits your opponent, right, too?
I believe that's correct.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Even worse. So Sever at 4 mana, I felt was right at that precipice of like, this should be fine. After trying it out at both of the cube events, it's really not fine. And I think the flashback really pushes it over. So that is finally getting the axe. And I just need to continue to be careful of what are player reactions to this. Even though it is very cool to the person that is able to cast it, it can also completely swing the pendulum in the other direction for the player. I don't want the games to feel that swingy unless somebody has committed a ton of mana into a big play, like Thrumming Stone and being able to hit it with Imposter, for example.
Yeah, I think that kind of goes back to our previous point that we were talking about balancing. It's like, until you've played the cube a few times and it's seen a lot of play, things like this when it's such a recontextualized cube, it can be so hard to tell if that's too good. So that's interesting that now you're realizing that it might be too powerful. And even then, I bet I've had cards like this where you're like, oh, but it's still so cool. Do I have to go?
One of the things I have loved about this cube versus providing my other cubes out in the wild, people are very opinionated about this cube and the different cards and the different plays, and I love it. When somebody has a very positive or very negative reaction, like you are invoking that reaction with those choices, and it really helps with the feedback, with understanding what players are enjoying. Sever the Bloodline was one of those, like, someone absolutely loves it. You absolutely hated it along with others. So that's great feedback to be like, okay, like, how are people viewing this? Sometimes it's a matter of, okay, this one's a little bit swingy, but it's still fine. It's a net positive. And then there's situations like, okay, that one's not really great for this. It's more of a feel bad than a feel good. But this feedback is much better than the, hey, how'd you think of this? It was fine. Not really helpful. It kind of feels like I'm not creating a great experience for you if you're coming out of it and you're like, that's fine.
You're creating emotion.
Yes. So I had a ball listening to everybody at Capital Cube and the few times I was able to watch at CubeCon.
I definitely had some salt flowing with Arcane Savant and Vivi. And Kerby, how about we jump into a pack one, pick one?
Sure thing.
And we also have to keep in mind 14 card pack, and you can use your cogwork. So that's good to know. You can take 2 if you want. So we got Arboreal Grazer, green, 0/3 reach. And as you can put a land from your hand on the battlefield tapped. We have Shattered Landscape, which is the Mardu Modern Horizons 3 fetch land. So you can cycle it for red, white, black, tap it for a colorless, or tap and sack to fetch for a mountain, plains, or swamp, or an Omnipresent Imposter. We got Keza Koilos, white, black, paint land. Mardu Woe Reaper, whenever it or another warrior enters, you can exile a creature from a graveyard if you gain a life. Lathlas Dragon Queen, 4 red, red, 6/6 flying. Whenever a non-token dragon you control enters, you get a 5/5 dragon with flying. And you also pay 1 red to give your dragons +1/+0 until end of turn. Temple of Enlightenment, white, blue, Scryland. Likeness Looter, blue, black, flying, 1/1. It's a looter, so you can draw a card and discard a card, like the name said. And you can also pay X. It becomes a copy of target creature in a graveyard man value X, except it's flying. So it can be the likeness, and it's a looter. Zergo Bell Striker, red 2/2, can't block creatures with power 2 or greater, not blocking the imposters, and also has 1 red dash. Then we have Misery Charm, black, instant, destroy target cleric, return a cleric from your graveyard to your hand, or have target player lose 2. That card seems like it does a lot. That's pretty cool. And then Beam Splitter Mage, blue, red 2/2. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery that targets only Beam Splitter Mage, if you control 1 or more other creatures that spell could target, choose one of those creatures and copy it. And the copy targets the chosen creature. That's an interesting one. Then we have Battlefield Forge, which is a red, white paint land. Murderous Redcap, 2 red, black Hydrid. 2/2 persist. When it enters, deals damage equal to its power to any target. Stalactite Stalker, black for a 1/1 menace. Goblin Rogue. At the beginning of your end step, if you descended this turn, put a 1/1 counter on Stalactite Stalker. And you can also play 2 in a black and sack it to give a creature -X/-X until end of turn where X is power. And then finally, Possibility Technician. 2 in a red. It has Warp for 1 in red, and it's a 3/3. And whenever this creature or another Kavu enters, exile the top card of your library. And for as long as that card remains exiled, you may pay it as long as you control a Kavu. What do you think of this pack? It's pretty interesting.
I'm very curious what your first/second pick are.
Oh, man, I really don't know. We just spoke for this for like an hour. I played this cube. Man, I feel like I'm so unqualified and like I have no idea what to take. But if I had to take something, I guess Misery Charm seems great. I mean, it's a kill spell. It can get back something. It's
Gets
great.
Back imposter.
If you're really around the imposter, it seems really cool.
These are one of those effects, the anti-imposter/changeling effects that I love, where you can just pay single black, kill a changeling because it's cleric. But it also works well in the cleric decks to be able to bring something back.
This is a card that would be way too broken for just a pure changeling cube. And then there's also Shattered Landscape, which these lands are great. I mean, they're 3-color fetch that can also search for an imposter. So I think I take these really highly. And then the technician is great too, just card draw, and it's a 3/3 for 3. I mean, how bad could it be? I feel like I'm just taking the shattered landscape here.
Possibility Technician is 100% my first pick.
Okay.
The fact that you're able to warp it, go ahead and reserve a card for later, or if you can play it that turn, and then you can just fetch out an imposter, and then you have access to that card again because it's a Kavu. And then you can play Technician, get another card off of it. Like, it gives you a ton of card advantage, even though the only other Kavus in the cube are changelings.
Yeah, this card I almost put into my changeling queue, but it does seem really strong. So I get that does seem like a good first pick. And there's also not much red in the pack other than last list, which it's a 6-drop, and Zergo. Who wants to play aggro anyway?
Yeah. One card I want to point out here, because just isolated in this pack seems a little bit weird, is Beam Splitter Mage.
Yes, I was looking at that one.
So something that I did for the Wizards-esque archetype is a cast a spell, copy the spell. So Beam Splitter Mage is one example. Zada Hedron Grinder, target Zada. You also get to copy it for your other creatures. And I'm going to be including Echoing Boon, which is a conspiracy that you name a creature name. When it becomes the target of an instant or sorcery, you get to copy it.
100th Ornithopter's All-Star.
Yes. Very big in that cube. So since Wizards needed something interesting about it, there were a handful of these cards that were incidentally like Wizards or fell under the other creature types. Also worked well with some of the prowess threats. Outside of Echoing Boon, it's not super targeted towards Omnipresent, but it overlaps enough with what Wizards and some of the adjacent archetypes are doing that you can still kind of build around that too.
It's great with like Ancestral Anger too, which you have 2 copies in the cube, plus 3+0 if you have 2 imposters in the grave, and plus 4+0 potentially.
It's just a divination for you too, for 1 mana.
Yeah.
Those combat tricks are just nice to have to reduce the potential of clogged up board states. Because if everybody's playing a bunch of 2 mana 2/1s and just filling up the board with them and focusing on those card typals, you do need a way to be able to break that stalemate and get in. And some of those combat tricks help out.
Definitely let us know in the comments what you would take from this pack. I think it's very interesting. I'm very curious to see what other people think. And yeah, I mean, Kerby, thank you so much for coming on. This has been great. It's always fun to see you at different events. Anything you want to say here before we wrap up?
Thank you very much for having me. This was a great time talking about the cube. Once again, congratulations on hitting 50 episodes. Woo! That's great. Outside of that, if you had a chance to play Omnipresent Imposters at CubeCon or just have some thoughts, there is a thread under the community projects on the CubeCon Discord. I would love to hear what you thought about it or if you have any ideas. But really appreciated all the feedback and praise that I got at the 2 Cube events. I really want to shout out my friend Shoop that helped me out with a ton of testing when we weren't able to get full pods of people while we were trying to lock in that list. He also created the Absolute Junk Cube and the 6-color Calamity Cube. Definitely check those out too. Also, my friend Brendan that joined us, he was able to get some people going with my Omnipresent Cube on Sunday while I was busy in the top 64. So just really appreciated hanging out. I loved meeting a ton of people, had a great time at CubeCon, and yeah.
Absolutely. And thank you all for listening. Please, like I mentioned before, like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. And we'll be back soon with more Cube. Have a good day.
Peace.